Okay, thank you. We'll start with a sediment by a roll call, if we could, please, Liam.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Before I move to the roll call, just to inform you that Councillor Lonche has given his apologies for the afternoon and has left the meeting.
And Councillor Miller as well. May join online.
Yes, indeed. So moving to a roll call. Councillor Cassie, please.
Present.
Councillor Bell.
Present.
Councillor Buchan.
Present.
Councillor Forsyth.
Present.
Councillor Grant.
Present.
Councillor Mayer.
Present.
Councillor Mason, please.
Present.
Councillor Owen, please.
Present.
Councillor Payne.
Present.
Councillor Reynolds.
Present.
Councillor Turner.
Present.
Thank you, Chair. 11 members are present.
Okay, thank you very much. We're still on item 6. We'll move to the final audit on the report. So, Andrew, if you'd like to introduce the Place Strategy Implementation Audit, please.
Thank you, Chair. The objective of this review was to gain assurance over the implementation of the Council's Place Strategy. Overall, we've been able to take limited assurance over this area, with the control framework driving a major net risk at a strategic level. Aspects of the control and governance framework were in place, including community planning, partnership governance arrangements, and a data hub, for example, had been developed for use in development of place plans. However, some risks were identified. There's been infrequent and inconsistent reporting on place plan progress to elected members and chief officers. Smart plans are not in place to prioritise outstanding actions. Place plan deadlines have been missed. There are also gaps in head of service capacity to co-lead on place plans, and the necessary toolkits and guidance were yet to be developed at the time of the review. Some work was required to improve accessibility to training. In terms of head of service operational plans, it was noted some place sections of these plans were absent to evidence a place-based approach to service delivery. And lastly, there was a lack of evidence of consideration of place impacts by services in budget setting to inform budget monitoring. Collectively, this has meant the place strategy has not progressed as intended. However, the service has agreed to a time-bound action plan to address highlighted risks and related recommendations. Thank you, and welcome any questions.
Yeah, thank you. Before I open it up for questions, Paul McCarry is on the call. Paul, would you like to add to the comments that have been made in relation to this audit?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think it's safe to say that when the policy was approved and the strategy approved by full council and we transitioned into the operation and delivery phases of both, we're a different organisation in 2026 from where we were in 2024. And I think it's recognising that the success in terms of the delivery to date has fallen by the wayside, I think is the best way to put it, given the recommendations from audit. But notwithstanding, the audit process is about actually getting us back on track. It's about improving us. It's about making us better and getting us to that point where you have assurance in the deliverability and the success of the policy and strategy. And that's the aim of the game here, is to get us to that. And that's why, looking at the mitigation actions that are recommended, we've committed to, as a cohort of chief officers around place, we've committed to the creation of that programme plan to get us back on track, to give assurance to Audit Committee and the other committees and members across the council that this is front and centre and what we want to do. It underpins our transformation strategy, and we want to make sure that we, for want of a better term, we nail it and we get it right. So there's 110% commitment from all of us that are involved to get us there, and recognising it's not just about 6 area managers, it's not just about myself as a strategic lead, it's about the full cohort of chief officers, service managers and officers underneath to transition to place-based working and place-based ways of thinking towards service delivery. So we celebrate the successes of our places and equally address some of the deficiencies that exist within those places too. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Got hands going up. Councillor Reynolds. Glenn, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Macari, for that. Not an easy expression on your part. I understand that, the challenges, and it's perfectly blatantly obvious from this report, which is sort of pretty embarrassing in terms of what has gone on or hasn't gone on. So my comments are not directed in any shape or form universally in relation to staff. I understand the challenges and the resource issues that they all face, but there's obviously something systemic, something structurally that's gone terribly wrong here. Because the place policy, let's be clear, is a flagship policy of the council. And it seems to me, in light of the comprehensive collapse in delivery timetables and many other aspects, which I don't need to dwell on, I'm sure other colleagues will mention them. As Paul has suggested, it's how we move forward. It seems to me that there needs to be some form of accelerated reporting cycle, requiring Paul and others to come up with aggressive milestone-tracked remedial action plans, followed by, and it's just a suggestion, mandatory quarterly progress updates. But I think one of the things that really, or the aspect that bothers me most about the outcomes that are detailed within this paper and where we go from here is that there's definitely a cart before horse issue, it seems to me, because I'd be interested in what Mr. Macari and others have to say about this, but I'm really struggling logically now to see how we expand the overarching transformation strategy when we have not got any comprehensive understanding, interpretation or analysis as set out in this paper with regard to place. How on earth can we move forward with transformation when we're not yet understanding place and are carrying out the work that's necessary around that, not least engagement with communities, etc., etc. Place, transformation strategy is really difficult to proceed with, it seems to me, logically, rationally, until the underlying data access issues, KPI definitions and toolkits for the place strategy are fully operational and verified by internal audit. So that fundamentally is an issue that I have with how we move forward. And it's important to recognise the impact of this paper on transformation strategy. It also seems to me that the outcomes here need to be shared and incorporated into the corporate improvement plan and elevated to community planning and the Community Planning Partnership Board. There needs to be some mechanism, some dynamic that means that what we have before us today and the problems and issues that it indicates are shared with key stakeholders like those in Community Partnership Planning Board, because this is too big. This is manifestly too much of a problem that other key bodies that are working on place at the moment or trying to work on place are not made aware, and that our conclusions are fed back to these other bodies, not least the Corporate Improvement Plan and the Communities Committee and the Community Partnership, Community Planning Partnership Board. So it's not easy, to say the least. but getting this right, which is obviously what we're all about, is so important. And to get the process right in terms of how this fits in juxtaposition with our transformation strategy is key as we go forward. Thanks.
Paul, did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, if I can, Chair, thank you. I think a lot of what you've said, Councillor Reynolds, is correct. I think all too often, with any new policy and strategy within our organisation, we drop it in and we immediately move to delivery. And I think in something as significant as place, where we're talking about a culture change, a real change in mind shift in terms of how we deliver services, I think there needed to be a wee bit of the strategic understanding undertaken to understand how it would impact our organisation, how it would change what we do. And I think all too often we jump to the delivery phase in terms of create place plans without actually doing the work in between. And a lot of what you've spoken about in terms of consistency of understanding, consistency of definitions, not just within our organisation, but within our partner organisations too, that speaks to some of the work that needs to go into what an action plan looks like, what that programme plan looks like. And you're right, in order to move forward quickly, to give not only confidence but assurance to our elected members and to services that this is the right path for us to follow, we need to move really quickly on this and quite aggressively in order to make sure that programme plan that we develop is both approved by this committee and also put into implementation as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Councillor Mayor, Doreen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I mean, it's very obvious from the report that there has been a total lack of strategic leadership here. And the steps you're speaking about now, Paul, should have happened 2 years ago. So, you know, we're speaking about having the place training strategy being developed now. 2 years ago would have been the place for that. And we need to roll that out, not only to council officers and the senior leadership, but to elected members too, because from various conversations I've had, it's obvious that some councillors have no concept of what place is and have no concept of what places they don't know about are. So I think we need to roll that out. In 2 years, I have never heard place coming into budget discussions. Never. And that should be fundamental. And we've already got the data hub, which shows, which gives us information on where there is the differing needs. So that needs to be rolled out right away as well. It could have been applied in budget discussions before. And I just feel, I know I was involved in a place meeting the other week and it was really good. So the teams on the ground have been doing the work and doing it extremely well and trying to develop these plans, but they definitely need that everybody in the council has got this on board, that everybody is considering place. I don't know how many times I've had reports that place hasn't been mentioned in it at all. So that needs to be deeply embedded into our thinking, into our psyche going forward. I was something else and I can't think what it is just now. But and we need to understand what the impacts are on our communities. At that place planning meeting, it was obvious from speaking to a lot of the people that were there that they weren't quite sure how the council and the various groups would gel to work together. We need to make it easier. We're asking our citizens to come forward and help us. So we need to build that trust. We need to make life simpler for them coming forward. We just need more direction, better planning, a critical path following. That's it.
Paul?
Yeah, I agree, Chair. I think you're right, Councillor Mayor. that's why I think robust programme management is needed, not only to deal with the mitigating actions, but also to ensure that we are in the right place, we've got the right resources around place, keep on saying place, to make sure that it's deliverable, and recognising that delivery will take it will take different forms in different places, given the nuances and the differences between our places. And you're right, there will be parts of Aberdeenshire when it comes to budget and resource that will require greater support than others, such as the dynamic within the Shire. I think like all change processes, it doesn't happen unless you resource it and create the capacity. And I think that's part of that strategic understanding, that it's not just about changing how we deliver services at an operational level, it's actually how we change the mindset on how we go about designing our services as well, and recognising the need for greater collaboration between services, especially when we're all operating in a same place as well. So I take on board everything that you've said, and that will be incorporated into our programme plan to deal with the mitigating actions, but also as we start to work through how we address both the strategic and operational aspects of place strategy and place policy. Thanks,
Yeah.
Chair.
With regards to budget, it's a case of it is not one Aberdeenshire, it's different places, and each needs different budgets, and that should be led by the data that's in the data hub.
Councillor Grant. Murray, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair, and thank you, Paul, for your comment on the report. A couple of things three things to pick out. I mean, one, it highlights a lack of smart targets, so that the fact that there's no smart targets incorporated does indicate a lack of progress and focus at the strategic level. The comment about place informing budgets, which has been highlighted that this doesn't take place, what would be the mechanism through which we could properly incorporate that within budget setting? It was certainly sobering to see the status of the 6 monthly area committee reports on place, many of which have not started. But my main comment, it was just regarding the community planning partnership. It states the CPP owns place plans. The development of each place plan is to be co-led by nominated area managers and heads of service and overseen by a place director. I'm not quite sure who they all are in the case of all these place plans, but it was more a question about the governance here. If the CPP owns place plans, how does that feed back to formal council committees and full council? So I don't think over the last few years I've seen any particular linkage there. So maybe that's more a question for Rob, perhaps. Thank you.
I'll bring Rob first, and then Paul, you can back up.
In terms of the budget, it's up to members how they allocate their budget and work through that budget process. If you want to do that on a place basis, you can absolutely do that. But members need to show leadership around that as well. This is not just about officers in terms of strategic leadership. With community planning obviously has members from every area around that. So you feed into community planning through that, but it also reports back through communities ultimately, but into full council as well. So there is those linkages across policy committees into the community planning environment. I think community planning is a really strong place for this, because the place plans, and when we look at places, they are not ours, they are not just the council's. We need to look at that in the wider sense. So all partners coming together. We've all got forms of place plans at the moment, so it's how we bring those together to look at how we can identify the best opportunities, the best needs and wants of communities, working with the communities themselves as well, to deliver against those. So I think there's an element, Paul's touched on the fact that the place strategy was a point in time. So we had that point in time where 17 place plans seemed like the best way to take it forward. We've had a number of workshops over recent months where partners and others have fed in to say, actually, we're not sure 17 place plans is still the requirement. A lot of community action plans exist. Communities have different focus, maybe than 17 academy towns. So can we look at something different? And partners have said, can we focus? So can we focus on 4 or 5 areas based on the data, as has been touched on, to look at where the priority need areas are, where we can come together. So we're working around that at the moment. So we will be refreshing the place strategy, the place framework, to look at the current needs, but also working with our partners to see what does that need to look like, and communities, for them to get the best benefit for them. So that will be coming through post-recess to full council for agreement, which I think will be a big step forward in what we're doing. And I think we touched on, if we just go back to links to transformation, we need to make sure this isn't seen as the only solution to transformation, in the way that we need to look at transformation as not being the only solution to the medium-term financial position. They are part of each other and they're absolutely linked, and having place as a key strategic enabler around transformation, so it is one of the key work themes now, I think will really help us drive that forward as well. It helps us put resource to it. So we'll be looking at putting a programme manager in place. Paul's working with somebody in that role at the moment, doing a mapping exercise. That will enable us to put the capacity in place, have the funding in place to really drive it on that we maybe haven't had and haven't seen prior to now. So I think there's lots of moving parts, and I've answered far more than just your question there, but happy to take anything that comes back as well.
No, that's great, Rob, and I appreciate community planning partnership because it involves other stakeholders as the best place perhaps to own and develop these. And I appreciate what you're saying about the linkage. I think perhaps it needs to be a bit more robust coming back to full council, because I'm not really aware personally of the progress or lack thereof of the place plans in the 17 areas that have been currently delineated. But yeah, that's fine. I'll leave it there. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Gillian, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul. I can tell how disappointed you are in terms of the actual audit report, but I think quite rightly, as you said, it's a place in time, and the time that this was actually promoted and pushed out. There have been a huge amount of changes in and around. And I suppose the gap between ambition and delivery is probably therefore quite significant. And that's not blaming anybody. That's just stating fact, to be perfectly honest. Just got a couple of questions. So I'm asking you, is capacity an issue? I don't probably need to ask you, because I think I probably know the answer. The next question is, when will nominated heads of service or co-leads be announced for the areas that don't have them? Because I see that there are a couple. How can we get place-based priorities beginning to direct and influence budget setting and investment decisions? I know Rob said that it's a case of it's up to councillors how they do it, but perhaps we need a little bit more guidance on how to achieve that. Thanks, Paul.
Paul.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Rowan. I think on place-based working, place-based budgeting, we did a really interesting exercise when we looked at the council priorities. So last year's budget setting process was the council plan and priority-based budgeting, so linking our service activities to our priorities. When you actually worked through the priorities and then you matched the place and wellbeing indicators to the priorities, you saw that across all the priorities, all the activities that we undertake as an organisation, we not only meet the council plan, we deliver the council plan, we also deliver on all the place and wellbeing outcomes. So in terms of those indicators, there are activities that score really highly in terms of delivering on them, and those that don't. But I think that is one way of identifying how we're addressing some of the challenges we have in terms of differentials on place across our organisation. It then has to drop into the services when it comes to that organisation, sort of that operational delivery of the service, to determine where they allocate that budget to in terms of the place. Where is the need greatest in terms of the work plans and the priority models that we use? That's at a very basic level what place-based budgeting would look like in a service. And I think it's recognising that that is possibly where we need to get to quickly, given that we've got 10 or so months until the next budget setting process. In terms of resourcing and capacity, we're an organisation with circa 15,000 people. There's more than enough people within the organisation to do this. I think this is an element of culture and mindset change, not just from the top down, but from the bottom up as well. And I think that comes down to how well we communicate the importance of the strategy and the benefits that it will bring to our organisation. As Rob says, the success of the transformation strategy isn't predicated upon the place strategy or place policy, but it's a combination of just about everything that we do. So for me, it's recognising that place is important, but place also is fed into by all the activities that we undertake as an organisation. So it's making sure that we're collegiate in that respect. I also think the data is incredibly important. There's no point in using inconsistent data sets, because then we compare apples with oranges, whereas the consistency of the data set and consistently monitoring that data set over time will demonstrate the interventions that we make on a place-based basis, how successful they are and how they will address some of the challenges that we're identifying within our places too. So I think there's an element of consistency. But like you said, not only is the place policy and strategy a snapshot in time, the place audit is a snapshot in time, because even since the audit was concluded, work's been ongoing to address some of those mitigating actions. And hopefully if members are content to allow me to come back with the programme plan once fully developed, you'll see that we've already started to make progress on those mitigating actions, recognising how important it is to hit the ground running on this. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Rowan.
Thank you.
I was just the other one was when can we see nominated heads of service co-leads for the areas that don't have them?
I think that speaks to maybe the bigger question as to whether or not 17 place plans is still the way to go, and whether or not we need to reduce that number down. I think certainly reading the audit report, there's a recognition that maybe 17 was right in 2024. It might not necessarily be the right thing for us to do now, or even the timetable might need to change if 17 is still the same, the right figure. But certainly we'll kind of look into that and incorporate that into the programme plan as part of one of the mitigating actions, is to review whether or not we need this or not. The one thing I would say, the co-leads is a great example and a great idea. In practice, what we've found is it doesn't necessarily give the level of strategic leadership required in order to, or the accountability required to deliver on a place plan. And I think from drawing on the lived experience within the chief officer cohort who have been around the development of place plans, we are looking at that and saying perhaps it's a different structure that's required to drive forward the delivery of those place plans. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. A timetable, I would suggest, probably does need changing, seeing as there's been an awful lot of slippage in it already. Councillor Turner. Alan, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair. Not so much questions, I'm more responding to what I've heard here and also what I'm reading in the papers, etc. Yeah, I'll pick up on the timeline, the timetable you've actually said there, Chair. I noticed that myself. So I'm left with, sitting here today, I'm being asked the question, am I assured or not? And if I'm not assured, well, my options are to look to stage 1, or as I've seen earlier on, with the right reasons, potentially a deferral. So I come back and I think, well, from what I've heard, we're looking at a place in terms of 17, I'll say it's Academy Towns. It might not be that, it might be a different metric for place. That is being looked at and considered. So I kind of come along the lines here as thinking, I can actually see a benefit towards deferring and seeing this come back later, perhaps in the year. And I don't know what is the exact timeline here myself, so maybe I could ask that is, you know, for if we're looking towards changing what we're setting out as place, and there'll be things come back through full council potentially, when would that potentially all be? Would it be Q4 this year you're thinking on? Would it be earlier, Q3? I look towards Mr. Simpson and Mr. McCarry just to get an idea on that, because that influences me as to if I'm not assured as to if it's a stage 1 or a deferral, because I'm conscious of the fact if you're changing the thing that we're actually auditing, to improve things, potentially based on all the feedback and everything, it would be wrong to hold the metric in some respects when the thing itself is changing. Thank you.
Rob, I'll let you answer that.
I'll go to Paul in terms of timelines, but I completely agree in terms of assurance or non-assurance with the place strategy as it stands. You will not be assured, and we make no bones about the fact this is not a good report, but will you be assured that we have implemented the place strategy as it currently stands? No, because we're not going to, because we are looking at a new place strategy coming forward. So that is the piece. So if I may just pass to Paul, just in terms of timelines, that'd be helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Through you, Chair. I think in terms of timelines within the mitigating actions and the management response to the audit, be committed to come back with that detailed programme plan in September to Audit Committee. And obviously in that period, our colleagues in internal audit would have had the opportunity to scrutinise it themselves to ensure it's both deliverable and speaks to the recommendations within the report. Thereafter, providing members were assured that we had captured the mitigating actions and we had a deliverable programme to both investigate, evaluate and then act upon them, those actions, we would then set forth to make those appropriate changes. And I think as part of the development of that programme plan, we also have to take into account the period for reviewing the policy and strategy, which is I think fall comes up next year. So depending on how far we get in terms of that programme plan with smart actions attached to it, we might find ourselves in that position where we're reporting back to Audit Committee 2 or 3 times before we set off down the route of reviewing the policy and strategy. So I think when it's something that's complex as place, it's not an operational aspect to service delivery. Place is corporate, it affects every aspect of what we do. It's recognising in something as complex as place, it might be that we have to come back 2 or 3 times to the Audit Committee before we have that level of assurance that you're happy for us to progress in the actions that we set out. Thanks, Chair.
Appreciate that, Mr. McCarry. And if I looked again at just the audit timetable, the next meeting is 10th of September, which obviously means papers go live early September in terms of the public. And hearing some of the things you've said there in terms of things it's contingent on, I think my own thoughts would actually 29th of October be a more realistic thing for you having more information in relation to closing out some of the actions as opposed to just the first bit? Would that be, I'm trying to, how would you put it? I'm quite happy if it was 10th, but I wouldn't want it to come to every audit committee, shall we say. I don't think that would be appropriate either for deferrals. Paul?
Yep. Thanks, Chair. Having listened to the previous item on the agenda and the debate that took place and then the motions and amendments, I think I'm in your hands whether or not you want me back in September or you want me back in October. I think realistically, as Councillor Turner's highlighted, it gives us more time and hopefully you're not just getting a programme plan, but hopefully you'll have some of those mitigating actions delivered in that period. Because as I said, the team of area managers and officers around this are working hard and diligently on those actions right now. That might be a more preferred position in terms of what the public get to see and equally providing you with assurance that we are heading in the right direction on this. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that response, Paul. What would be more realistic if we were looking at you bringing the programme plan, action plan, call it what we may, back to us? Obviously, that will be before it comes to full council. The strategy comes to full council because it's the action plan that we need to see that is dealing with what is contained within the audit paper. What would be more realistic timetable that actually gives us some information? Would it be the 10th of September or would it be the 29th of October?
29th of October. Okay.
So that's a time frame that we can work within. Before I bring you in, Murray, I'll have my say because you've already had a shot. So I read the report and I saw, is it the chicken before the egg or the egg before the chicken? And was there how the egg gets into the chicken coming out in the wrong way? And that was the transformation element of it. Is it place driving budget or is it budget driving place? Because I think we seem to be going down the route as we haven't really decided yet what a place really is, that it's the budget that is still driving everything. So to pinch the front page of the Grampian Chamber of Commerce website from 18 months ago, the annual salami slicing fest that happens here in February is the driver, and therefore things are being cut before the place has even been considered. So will this program actually get us back on track to looking at what a place actually is? And do people know what a place is? That's all of the people around the table that are discussing this. And more importantly, do our communities know this? Because it's the communities that make the place. They are the ones. We provide the services. And in that providing services, it's been mentioned quite a lot throughout the discussion, the collaboration with other agencies, the working in partnership with other agencies. I don't see an awful lot of joined up thinking. We started off with the 17 academy towns as what our places will be based upon. The NHS have got 20. I don't know what fire and rescue have got or the police have got. We're all talking about different places or what are different places. So to get that place so that you've got the full suite of data, everybody needs to sing from the same hymn sheet so that we're all looking at the same data for the same people who live in that same place. So I hope that when this comes forward, we move away from the budgeting driving the place, and it's the place that drives the budget. As you've mentioned, Paul, where is the greatest need? And it's only the data that is going to show us that. Did you want to comment on any of that? Or I know it was more of a statement than a question, and my view on things.
No, I think you've nailed it well, Chair.
Thank you very much. Murray, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It was just a very quick point to pick up on the statement that needs have evolved in 2 years, since 2024. Can you be a bit more explicit, perhaps, Paul, about what actually has evolved in terms of needs, or is it more a case of a realization that the original vision isn't quite as easily implementable as at first thought? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Grant. I don't think the vision isn't implementable. I think it comes down to, as an organisation, our resourcing's changed, our needs have changed, the asks on services hasn't relented. And I think it's in that context, how do we drive change that creates capacity that enables us to get after some of the real challenges that our communities have? And I think that's the element. We've not resourced place policy and strategy in the same way that would resource an operational action on a service, and I think that's what's prevented us delivering. I think that it's twofold. We need to create the foundation, the solid understanding of what, as the Chair's spoken about, what place is, what's the consistent definition, what's the place principle, how does that affect what we do, how we do it, and equally how does that then translate into actions on the ground and creating the resources in the right places in Aberdeenshire to deliver on those actions. So I think this is a lot about education, it's about culture, it's about strategic leadership within services, within the chief officer cohort to drive this forward. And I think the vision's still implementable. It's just a case of putting our shoulder to it collectively and driving it forward, because I don't think any of the actions that are being recommended by internal audit are telling us that we can do it. It's just that we need to be tighter, really tighter and collegiate in terms of how we do it, and we act as one council when we're delivering the police policy and strategy, and recognise what's right, for example, in planning and economy, might not be right in terms of how that impacts upon roads and infrastructure, in terms of how they deliver their work plans. And equally, the decisions that I make on budget could have an adverse impact on a place. How are we recording that? And that goes into some of the impact assessment work that the teams are doing just now to make sure we are able to accurately record the impacts of our decisions and our activities on our places. But I don't think the vision is insurmountable. I think it's definitely deliverable. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I was thinking more specifically of the original plan about 17 academy towns, but I think you've summarised it pretty well there. We need to have a clear understanding of what we mean by place and what we want to achieve, and then the budget process would need to feed into that, because we can't budget taking cognizance of place unless we've got a clear idea of what we want to achieve. Thank you.
Councillor Reynolds, Glenn.
Yes, thank you, Chair, for letting me back in. I mean, it's not a coincidence, it seems to me, that place as a policy, not just for us in the Shire, but throughout Scotland and the UK for that matter, place has been deliberately designed to facilitate actions that deal with fiscal constraint, because it basically at the heart of place is prioritisation. So it's not so much about the geography, and that mindset. It's about how to make best use of limited resources and focus them where they are needed and where there is that capability. But the point I wanted to make, Paul, that in terms of, I mean, it was very interesting to hear what Rob said, alarming to some extent, about a new place policy. I mean, I understand what Rob is saying, but I'm thinking about making sure that the communities are still at the heart of this, and whether this new place policy, Paul, are you refreshing or relooking or building? There's a lot of work that some community councils, for example, not exclusively, but some community councils are obviously starting to look at place and being advised as to how they can prioritise. Are you looking at enhancing or rethinking the approach towards communities in this newly defined and refined place policy? Thanks.
Paul?
Yep, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Reynolds. I think we've taken a data-led approach. There's no doubt about it. And at any given time, every service in the council is engaging with our communities in some form or another. And I think that's the importance of the data hub, is actually how we collate all of that data and actually use it to inform the policy development and how we then take it forward in creating place plans, for example. But you're right, there's no point in creating. So to take you back to my undergrad degree in geography, place is just space with meaning, and it's only people that give space meaning, because it's only us, it's only humans that are able to do that. So it comes back to the fact that you can't create place plans without having full cognizance of the people that you're impacting, because otherwise you'll drive people away from the place if you don't create a successful or a happy place. So I think at the forefront of our mind is the community needs to be engaged, and we need to be creating places that support our communities and their needs. So yeah, the community's needs will be taken forward. So the data is important. We're engaging. That's the community views, and that'll be quite essential for us all services to use. But in addition to that, where we have gaps in our data, then that will force us back out. And at any given time, you have to sense check the plans that we do create, or the activities that we do want to deliver, to make sure that they are fulfilling the needs of our communities, without a doubt. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm seeing no further hands, so let me try and summarise this. As the report stands, I'm not assured. However, there is an offer from Paul to bring back to us the detailed action plan, programme, plan, whatever it may be called, as to how this is refreshed, driven forwards, reinvigorated, putting in the mitigations that have been highlighted as being required by the internal audit. report, and the more realistic approach to that would be on Thursday, the 29th of October. Would that be a reasonable deferral if all were in agreement? Well, that seems to be the way forward. So, Paul, thank you for that offer of the action plan, and thank you for the candidly stating that 2-cycle would give a more realistic outlook of that plan. So we look forward to seeing that on the 29th of October, along with the report, and we'll see where we get with regards to assurance at that time. And best of luck with finding out what a place is, because everywhere I go seems to be a place all on its own.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, committee. With that, we can now move out of item 6. Thank you, Andrew, for everything so far. We move on to item 7, which is the scrutiny referral to Education and Children's Services. And Andrew Dick, you're back with us again, along with Lynn Thompson, Social Work Manager. Would you like to introduce the paper to us, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. So I'm pleased to present this report, which provides the Audit Committee with an update on the scrutiny work undertaken by the Education and Children's Services Committee in response to the internal audit report on secure care provision. As members will recall, Audit Committee considered the audit in December 2025 and determined that it wasn't assured at that time by the findings at that stage. The matter was therefore referred to the Education and Children's Services Committee to undertake a Stage 1 committee review process. So the purpose of today's report is to provide assurance to the Audit Committee regarding the work that's been completed since that referral, and to seek agreement that the actions have appropriately been addressed the issues that were identified by internal audit. So by way of context, the audit examined Aberdeenshire's arrangements in terms of the use of secure care between August and November 2025. The audit reviewed our care planning arrangements, review processes, safety and risk management arrangements, and financial controls associated with secure care placements. Members will note that the service undertook considerable work following the publication of the Children and Young People's Commissioner's Report Unlocking Children's Rights in 2021. As a result, guidance documents, templates, checklists and flowcharts had been developed to support staff involved in secure care decisions. However, the audit identified a number of areas that required improvement in relation to that, particularly around payment controls, written procedures and training, procurement arrangements, and the implementation and review of processes. So the Education and Children's Services Committee considered a detailed Stage 1 scrutiny report in March this year. The committee examined each of the audit recommendations, the actions being taken by the service, and the progress that had been made. And following that scrutiny, the committee concluded that it was assured that the service had responded appropriately to the issues identified, and that a Stage 2 workshop was not deemed to be required by them. So I'm pleased to report that substantial progress has been achieved across the recommendations within the audit. Improvements have included the introduction of strengthened payment control arrangements, enhanced check-in processes for invoices and individual placement agreements, updated guidance and training for managers, the cessation of advance payments, and the recovery of identified overpayments. Secure care guidance, checklists and procedures have been comprehensively reviewed and updated to reflect current legislative requirements, including consideration of alternatives to secure care and mechanisms for ensuring that young people's views are communicated directly to the Chief Social Work Officer. In addition, delegated authority arrangements have been reviewed and updated. Secure transport contracts have been formalised in line with procurement requirements. Contract register information has been updated, and emergency placement procedures and statutory checklists have been revised and rolled out across our operational teams. Importantly, the report before you today demonstrates that all bar one of the actions identified have been achieved, and the remaining action was due to be completed by the end of June. However, it's requiring some further implementation time, and therefore we'll have a revised timescale of the end of July for completion of that one remaining action. From my perspective as a head of children's services and as the chief social work officer, the process has given valuable challenge and scrutiny to us. It's strengthened our systems and it's increased our assurance that secure care decisions are supported by robust governance, clear procedures, effective financial controls, and importantly, an unwavering focus on the rights, safety and well-being of vulnerable young people who require secure care. As you noted, Chair, I'm joined by Lynn Thompson, one of our social work managers, who was our service lead for the audit, and together Lynn and I are happy to try to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Hey, Councillor Grant Murray.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the update, Andrew. One of my queries was about that one outstanding action due at the end of June. So thank you for the update on that. But I mean, given the gravity of all these issues, I can just commend the service for being able to tick them all off and get them sorted as a result of the audit. So I suppose my one query left is, given that all these things have now been put in place, I'm presuming that there's robust governance in place to avoid any slippage in the future. Just welcome any comment on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, Councillor Grant. I think we have taken really seriously the issues that were raised within the audit and set out very clear actions. I think a number of the actions are not one-offs. They are things that will strengthen our ongoing robust arrangements. And so through continued awareness raising of the policies, the procedures, the checklists, the guidance that are in place, and continuing to draw attention to that on a regular basis, I think that to me would be the way that we ensure that we continue to adhere to the improvements that we have been able to make.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I see no further hands up, but I'll just make a quick point. And that's in relation to the outstanding action. I know there's a short-term extension being asked. You were in the meeting this morning. Please try and make that, because a special invite will be sent out should you not do so. But well done on completing all the other actions on what was pretty serious auditing not that long ago. So thanks to yourselves, and can you thank your teams for putting all of this in place? Thank you very much for that. I'll take members to the recommendations. We've been asked to acknowledge that Education and Children's Services Committee agreed to conduct the Stage 1 committee review process. To note that Education and Children's Services Committee were assured by the Stage 1 scrutiny report and that a Stage 2 workshop was not required. We now have 2 recommendations. We have a choice of one. Are we assured of the action taken? Yes, and with that negates the final recommendation then. So 121 through to 123 have been agreed. Thank you very much, and try and stick all of your ones in the future closer together so you're not around for the whole day. With that, that takes us on to item 8, which is the annual governance statement. And we have Michelle Milne, Customer Service Manager, who will introduce this. Good afternoon, Michelle.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So this report presents the draft annual governance statement, which outlines how the Council maintained effective governance arrangements during the year ending 31st of March 2026. The statement provides assurance that business was conducted lawfully, ethically, and in line with recognised good practice, that public resources were safeguarded, and that decisions and services were delivered in accordance with the Council's Code of Corporate Governance. The annual governance statement sets out the Council's governance, risk management, and internal control arrangements, and highlights progress in key areas, including financial sustainability, transformation, and partnership working. Internal and external audit work confirms that these arrangements remain effective and fit for purpose, whilst actions have been identified to support continuous improvement and the delivery of high-quality, sustainable services. The draft statement has been updated to reflect comments and recommendations received from policy committees. These amendments include the removal of the strengths and areas for improvement self-evaluation section, clarification regarding the role of the Collaboration Board, inclusion of sustainability champions under Principle 5, and recognition of the integration of the carbon budget within the medium-term financial strategy and budget setting process. Details of all comments and amendments are provided in Appendix 2. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Michelle. I'll open it up for questions. Bear in mind this has been around all policy committees on the annual World Tour. All the equipment has been put away until the 27 tour comes online. Councillor Owen, Gillian.
Thank you. Just one. I mean, I think multiple audits show recurring weakness, and that is always a bit of a concern. But how does the conclusion of effective governance align with the recurring themes of control weakness identified in the internal reports?
Michelle, can you answer that?
I'm afraid I would struggle to answer that one. Sorry. I can take that back, or perhaps Mr. Simpson would be able to provide some support on that one. I don't know.
Happy to. I don't think there's systemic control issues, and perhaps internal audit would have a view around that. But I think this comes back to your question of earlier today as well. I don't think there's systemic issues that we are seeing, but we do see individual issues within specific service areas, and a lot of those are down to personnel rather than the controls themselves. Sometimes it is the controls, and we do find that through the audit process. Sometimes it is people not following the process. But I don't think it's a systemic issue for us as a council, certainly not that I am seeing. So I appreciate there's a number of audits that we see through here that do show specific instances and specific issues. I think we need to see that in the broader scheme of 15,000 employees, thousands of processes happening every single day across the council, tens of thousands every week, hundreds of thousands every year. So I think within the scheme of that, I don't think we have systemic issues, albeit there is absolutely room for improvement with what we see in front of us, particularly through this committee. Thank you.
Did you want to come back?
I just wanted to say I didn't use the word systemic this time. I know, but not on this specific one.
There's been some comments. So this is before us today for consideration and comment, particularly around this committee and the contribution to delivering good governance. Any suggestions? Do you believe that we play our part? Given this morning, I would say I would concur. Okay, so I'm not seeing any further hands up, so I will take members to the recommendations, which are on page 83. To consider and approve the draft annual governance statement, the draft statement attached to Appendix 1, and noting the engagement with policy committees in the development of the document. Do we agree that recommendation? Okay, thank you, and thank you, Michelle, for taking us through that. We now move on to the final item on today's agenda, which is the unaudited accounts for 2025-26 for Aberdeenshire Council and its charitable trusts. And I will hand over to Colin Watt, the Strategic Finance Manager, who will take us through the paper.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll just share my slides just to run through a few areas. So thanks, and happy to I'm pleased to present the draft annual accounts for the council and the charitable trusts for 25-26. I suppose just giving a few highlights from the document. Looking at the revenue side, in the first instance, you'll see that we have a net under budget position of 7.76 million before transfer to reserves. This is consistent with what was reported through full council last week. Just to remind members that this is an unaudited stage, and external audit will now review the accounts and the disclosures, as well as all the judgments and supporting evidence, and come back to committee later in the year to report the final position. The next slide is looking at the capital. So this sets out the delivery and timing delivery and timings slide rather than a detailed capital monitoring report. So the capital programme delivery was around 68% of plan, again consistent with what was reported to full council last week. The key message here is that slippage reflecting rephasing and project timing rather than overspends. We continue to invest in schools, infrastructure and council assets. And for the housing revenue account, again, a positive position alongside continued investment in the housing stock. The next slide is around the reserves. So the reserves position gives that strategic capacity to manage risk and support transition. So you can see within the draft annual accounts that the reserves have increased. This supports the financial resilience, but shouldn't be read that everything is fine now. I suppose it just gives that extra headroom for any unfunded commitments. And there's still that medium-term funding gap, which is reflected within the draft document. So there's still that longer-term challenge remaining around the ongoing transformation, recurring savings and careful use of reserves to balance that resilience over the medium term. The next slide is just to pull out the key bits around the governance and assurance, so linking back to the previous item on the agenda. The report pulls in information from the annual governance statement, internal audit and performance indicators. So overall, assurance is positive, while demand-led services continue to create pressure. But this doesn't remove the risk. So the key risk for the committee to note is that the structural budget gap over the medium term is still there. There's still the reliance on transformation savings, and the capital affordability and borrowing limits are key things to be aware of, as well as workforce and demand pressures, and the financial sustainability of the IGB is a continued area of focus. The next couple of slides is just really to highlight the areas that the external auditors highlighted in their audit plan that was considered at the committee back in April, just so members are aware of the areas that the external auditors are expected or plan to look at in the draft annual accounts. So they will look at the key judgment areas, considering whether the judgments that management have made and assumptions that we've made in the draft annual accounts are reasonable. They are set out in notes 3 and 4 of the document. They'll also look at the group accounts and partnership complexity to make sure that we have disclosed that clearly. So the group accounts are towards the end of the document, and they're detailed there, showing all the different group interests that the council have. And the external auditors also look at the wider best value and sustainability, and the areas that they have said that they'll be focusing on this year is the sort of partnership risks, and considering how partnership risks are reflected in the financial position, particularly around the IGB, and we have reflected that in the management commentary under the principal risks and uncertainties. And then finally, the wider scope and best value arrangements, they will be looking at that around the financial sustainability. So again, that's reflected within the management commentary of the document. The chair has helpfully provided some questions in advance of the meeting, so I've summarised the questions and the responses that we've had from officers, which I'll just run through. The first question was around the population data in the first part of the management commentary. Just for clarity, that data is consistent with what was reported in the strategic assessment in 24-25 and is based on the census records in 2022. So it's not necessarily changed every year, so it might look like the population hasn't moved since 2022, but it's just based on that data. But we'll get clarity from the service to see if there's any more information that we can provide within that to make that a bit clearer. The second question was around the Left Ski Centre on page 132 of the document, just asking what our liabilities are there. So we've got shares to the value of 77,000, and that is the limit of our liability if, for example, if the organisation went bankrupt, the council would be liable for that 77,000, and it would require a write-off, and it would impact on the overall council's position. The next question was around the route map to 2030, and I know that's been discussed on the agenda already. So the management commentary refers to the route map action plan. The service has confirmed that they continue to deliver projects where resources are in place. While delivery has not stopped, progress on some of the actions has been delayed due to pending Scottish Government legislation. Progress reports are being submitted to the Sustainability Committee every 6 months, and a further report will committee in, jumped on the wrong page. Fortunes Committee in August, and I'm aware that there is a workshop with the Audit Committee in August as well to cover that in a bit more detail. Question 4 was around council tax debtors and general debtors. So you can see within the draft annual accounts that it's still increasing year on year. So just to understand why that's happened, and is there anything we could do to improve the collection and reduce debt. So just a bit of context around that. So the council tax and general debtors balance have increased, but doesn't necessarily reflect the poorer collection performance. But the council tax rates have increased over the last 3 years, and the service charges for customers have also increased. So balances we're not comparing a sort of static charge each year. Debtors balances are affected by the timing of billing and the wider economic environment, as well as collection activity. The council tax collection was 96.21% in 25-26, which is above the Scottish average, demonstrating that our collection performance is still remaining strong. We do, however, still continue to pursue early intervention, flexible payment engagement, robust recovery processes, and improved digital approaches to maximise collection. And I suppose while higher collection levels could help support wider services, as noted earlier, the council does continue to face significant medium-term financial pressure, so an improved debt recovery wouldn't alone remove the need for broader savings and transformation measures. There was a question around the HRA and when we'll be able to eliminate the void issue. Update from the service is detailed here. So no landlord will be able to eliminate voids in entirety. I suppose it's part of doing business for any landlord. And for Aberdeenshire, we have around the highest net turnover of any local authority in Scotland, which means our properties become vacant more regularly. We can do more on sustaining tenancies, but they're largely a result of different options that are available to our tenants across the social and private renting sectors. What is within our gift is around the relet times, and the latest data shows that our average relet days is 37 days compared to a Scottish average of 45.5. And similarly, void rents have dropped from 2.18% to 1.53. So there is improvements in recent years by focusing on and working together to reduce that. And the service has also confirmed it's looking for improvements and has recently been part of a peer review exercise with improvement services. And the final question was around the common good balance. You'll note on page 169 that there's a large reduction in the Banff and Macduff balances. This movement relates to the revaluation of the land and buildings at Canal Park, which is split evenly across those two funds. So the land had previously been classified as held for sale, and that was valued at a market value, but now that is no longer being pursued. So the valuation basis has changed, and it's now reflected as an existing use value. So that explains why that 2 million movement has happened. So the next steps, the draft annual accounts will be passed to our external auditors, who will review and report back any findings and adjustments. We also plan to do an open session on the accounts, similar to what we've done in previous years, with all councillors invited. We're just trying to get that organised for September. And the external auditors will report back to the Audit Committee at the end of October. I'll stop sharing my screen. Happy to take any questions.
So some of the questions had been edited somewhat. Quite happy with that. The percentage on the voids. Final part of my question was, I have plenty of ideas as to where to spend £1.99 million because we could do with that money. Councillor Grant Murray.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Carl. And just a quick question about participatory budgeting, the 1% target that had been set 2017, I think it said. We've got a target this year or this last year of £6.27 million. I do know what it said in the unaudited accounts that a figure has yet to be calculated, but given only 222,400 was spent in, was it the year before, out of a similar target of about 5 to 6 million, do we envisage any improvement in that, given that's, you know, maybe about 3 to 4% of the target that was actually achieved under PPB? Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Grant. I don't have the details on what work is being done on participatory budgeting, but that's something we could certainly go back to the service and get that information and share that with you. I know there is a lot of work on the go in terms of trying to collate what can be badged as participatory budgeting, but I don't have any of the details to hand.
No, that's okay. I mean, I'm sure it'll be reported in due course. Do you have any timeline in mind when it would be available? Don't worry if you don't. It was just a ballpark figure would be fine. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm seeing no further hands, so I will take members to page 100 of your agenda pack, and the recommendation we have before us is to consider the unaudited annual accounts 2025-26 for Aberdeenshire Council and its charitable trusts. Do you agree that we've considered them? Okay, thank you very much. I can confirm that the meeting has now concluded. Now I'd like to thank you for your interest and your participation. So thank you very much, everybody, for what turned out to be a longer day than I thought.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.